During the search and rescue efforts, unfortunately, Ron was exposed to harmful dust and debris.
On the periphery of the CAT scan, there was lung nodules in my lungs, and I was like shocked. I'm like, oh my God. And I knew it was the World Trade Center because I spent 7 months there. Probably 10 to 15 year mark is when it really hit. There was a lot of people that had to retire due to disabilities.
We gave you 40 million of stem cells. How was that experience?
Amazing. I had no fatigue. I actually had the reverse. I had more energy. The 2-week mark after, my verbal skills, my word retrieval was a heck of a lot better. Like I was spitting out words to where I don't remember saying that word in years. I made a pact to myself that I'm going to be the first disabled 9/11 responder to live to 100. And I'm going to do that with the big tool of stem cells.
Hello, welcome to the Dr. Joy Kong podcast again. As you know, this podcast is all about bringing people healing, wellness, longevity. So I invite different experts to come and shed light on different aspects of health and wellness. And today I have a very special guest and a little different from my usual guests. So I have Ron Pastino here with us. And Ron was actually a 9/11 responder. So I'll talk about his history a little bit. But he has his own health journeys that I think will be really helpful to share with everybody. So I want to welcome Ron to the podcast.
Thanks, Dr. Joy. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you. So let me introduce you a little bit to the audience. He is a veteran. He served in the U.S. military and then went on to serve his community in the New York State Police Special Operations. And that's a career that he excelled at the highest level. And he dedicated himself to work, faithfully fulfilling his duties regardless of the risks. And that all culminated in a 7-month assignment at Ground Zero following the 9/11 attack on the World Trade Center. And during the search and rescue efforts, unfortunately, Ron was exposed to harmful dust and debris. And this resulted in a change of the course of his life. So in addition to the physical and emotional challenges, the financial burden that the loss has placed on Ron and his family has been immense. Ron has been participating in cutting-edge holistic treatments and in search for new types of treatment options to keep the lung disease from progressing. The treatment included stem cell therapy. Ron is a leadership and resilience speaker who teaches people to shift their mindset 15 degrees left or right. So we'll talk about that to find the positive solution to problems and success. Additionally, thinking outside the box with vision. That's what he believes in. And one quote that he talks about is perseverance is the synonym of victory. Beautiful quote. So thank you so much, Ron, for being here with me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to discuss my story and the holistic treatments that are being successful for me.
Yeah. And thank you so much for your service for this country and, to New York State. So maybe you can share with the audience a little bit about just what happened. I think there was, your experience with 9/11 and then what you think that did to your health.
Thanks, Dr. Joy, and humbled by the compliment. Thank you. I was in New York State Police Special Operations. I was a station commander that supervised all the statewide tactical operations, hunting the worst of the worst, terrorists, etc. We also did rescues in the Adirondack and Catskill Mountains, mountain rescues when they were needed, and bridge rescues. After the second plane hit the World Trade Center, we then knew it was a terrorist attack. Part of our team flew down and part of us drove down. I was on a drive team and ultimately got down there, and it was, I'm speechless as to actually what it emotionally did to me, but we acted, we did our job, and went in to start rescuing people, but ultimately didn't, and ended up doing 7 months of recovery work, evidence recovery, and sensitive security assignments down there. the plume of dust and debris was so immense. It was hundreds of feet in the air as we drove down the West Side Highway into Manhattan. And, I was in my late 20s then, and you're totally motivated and you're really not thinking about the, physiological effects of dust and debris. You just don't think of that as somebody that age or whatever when you're going in to do your job. And we thought, more like other terrorist cells going to be we're going to be dealing with them. What yet it ultimately came out to be, it was the dust and debris that was the main culprit of a lot of our career endings in law enforcement and the first responder world. We wore masks after a few days down there, but you're in the area, you're in that contaminated zone. You have to take your mask off to eat, to go to the bathroom. You just can't wear it 12 hours a day nonstop and be so clinical about it. It's just not realistic. So no matter what you do or did, you could prevent most of it, but the majority of toxins were within the first 3 days, the harshest portions of that. And, I know some colleagues that unfortunately passed of some diseases and cancers that did not spend more than a week or two on that pile. But the evidence showed it was the first week. So that's the potency of, when you first go to these disaster areas. And let me highlight that this, I ended up with a lung disease as a result of it 15 years after. I never saw it coming. But this correlates to the military burn pit folks from overseas where they burn their trash and the soldiers and military personnel were breathing the toxins. It's the same substances, as well as earthquake victims, natural disasters, what have you, where it creates this dust and debris. It's the same thing. So, I just want to kind of get the message out to folks that the importance of preventative measures before you enter a scene or when you're in the scene to start those preventative measures. So, to get more into my story, I had some little lingering skin and sinus infections that I would get yearly after my 7 months time on the pile. I'd probably get 6 or 7 sinus infections a year. Ultimately, I got that minimized by utilizing the World Trade Center Health Fund to get me to an ear, nose, and throat doctor and the neti pot, actually, simple, holistic thing that prevents me from getting these sinus infections anymore. So it's something pretty simple, easy that helped me. You basically almost had to be the professional athlete level to be on my team because it was a tier 1 asset for the state of New York. So, when first responders needs help, they would call us. So it'd be the top level of folks, and it was very competitive. It's like being in selection for your whole career. So how I knew something was wrong is I went on a simple 3-mile run at year 15 in 2016, and I had a hard time breathing when it was nothing for me to run, 15 miles one day and 10 the next and just not even think about it and just what you did.
So are you saying the first 15 years after 9/11, you were feeling okay?
It took 15 years, and then it was like a light switch. It hit me.
And you said there were frequent sinus infections.
There were.
So were those the only sign that something was a little different?
Yeah, for me. There were other folks, 3-4 years after they ended up with cancer and passing away. I've lost a lot of friends and colleagues to these unfortunate cancers and diseases from 9/11. Recently, I lost 4 colleagues within the past few months, unfortunately. So I ended up going to my personal doctor because I was having shortness of breath, which was very odd for me, and I just felt ill. And he thought it maybe was my heart, so prescribed me a CAT scan of my upper chest to check my heart, and did a blood work and all that, what you would typically do. So I went and did the CAT scan, and ultimately my heart was great, but on the periphery of the CAT scan, there was lung nodules in my lungs, and I was
Mm.
like shocked. I'm like, oh my God, what the heck's going on? I've never smoked. I was the epitome of health. And I knew it was the World Trade Center because I spent 7 months there. And ultimately, and I'll bring this up as a point, Dr. Joy, because this is part of my recipe for success to tell others, is to be your own self advocate. And I know you preach this too, to trust your gut too. So the first pulmonologist I ended up going to did not think it was a lung disease and thought it was maybe a fungal issue within my lungs. And I just knew he was wrong. And because when we would chase bad guys, we'd go into these remote farms in upstate New York where there was fungal things going on. And he's like, that's probably what you got going on because you're always in those environments. And I trusted my gut. I ended up going down to Weill Cornell in New York City, the top pulmonologist there. And ultimately, they were like, oh my God, you probably have lymphoma. You definitely got a lung disease, and it's all from 9/11. We got to get you in surgery like yesterday. So ultimately, I had two surgeries. I lost a quarter of my right lung. They found granulomas on my lymph nodes in my chest, which they took most of them out, and then around my lungs. So and then I got two focal emphysema holes in the bottom of my lungs where the dust and debris settled. Your body, I thought this was pretty cool. Not cool that I have it, but anyway, your body does some cool things. Try to get rid of these holes, open up to try to eliminate the dust and debris out of your lung. At that point, I had to make a decision because the shortness of breath was affecting my mental performance. I was in command of 55 people, special operations guys, and I did not want to make a bad decision and get somebody killed and serve the public wrong, basically. So I threw in the towel, and I heard retirement was good. Although in my mid 40s, I would still be there right now. I miss it dearly. It was who I am, and I enjoyed it. But I ultimately retired, and I had a rough couple year transition with
You
identity.
retired because you felt you couldn't perform your job adequately
Correct.
because
Yeah.
of the lung conditions and also your mental capacity, you're saying?
Yeah. The shortness of breath, affects your mental performance. If you're, I could tell I wasn't thinking straight because I was dealing with something that was so foreign to me, like a kink in my armor. And I never thought that something would put me to a knee like this. So I had to figure out how to be a civilian and figure out who I was. And ultimately, it ended up being me getting back up on my feet after believing in that quote, perseverance is a synonym of victory.
Mm.
And
It's a common story among 9/11 responders, basically having to get out of their career.
it is. There's some people still working. They have minor symptoms, which they can, but there's quite a few now. It probably 10 to 15 year mark is when it really hit. There's a lot of people that had to retire due to disabilities or they died.
Mm.
Unfortunately, it's unfortunate all around. And I tell people that the 9/11 terrorist attacks are the longest acting terrorist attacks in history. They're still killing. They still
Mhm.
are 22 years later.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were in this health fund that helps veterans. What kind of care did you get from it? Did you feel that was adequate for you?
Um, it's a very good program that offers breathing tests to check your lung volume to you keep an eye on if you end up getting a lung disease so they can stay ahead of it. blood work, and a full medical evaluation, EKG, an X-ray every couple of years. I think it's a good program to catch something, but after I started to understand, more of the medical world and thinking outside the box and trusting my gut, there's more that you can do. And look, there's only so much each program can do because of the funding, because of the FDA rules, and which are prohibitive to certain stem cells and high-end outside the box procedures. So I just knew that it wasn't enough for what I needed, because I'm a big prevention guy. And I'm watching colleagues die around me, and I'm like, I don't want that. I'm not going to let these terrorists take me out. And not that they didn't fight. It's just, I'm a special operations guy. I'm like, there's more, I got to shift my mindset 15 degrees left and think about other ways and methods that I don't even know about. And I got to research and find and take these new treatments and stuff. And that's what I did. Hours and hours of internet searches, and then talking to certain doctors that lead me in a different direction. And ultimately, I became my own shaman and started figuring out a recipe for success. And what I found was that pharmaceuticals played the part in this, but I was getting better results for anti-inflammation, feelings from the holistic world, oddly enough, which I thought was excellent. So I take an array of supplements that's as long as a kitchen counter. It's expensive. I spend probably $5,000 a year on these supplements, but they're part of my recipe. They're part of me still being on this planet. I'll give you an example, which even motivated me more. I ended up going. I reached out to a charity called Boot Campaign because I was at wit's end. I just kept internet searching. I'm looking for help. I reached out to these wellness charities, and finally I get through to one, and Boot Campaign and I'm still a participant actually, and a brand ambassador for them. They're excellent. They provide services with meditation counseling, heart rate variability training, which is another recipe for success. And I'm going to get really granola on you, but the granola is what saved lives, in my opinion. It's why I'm still here. So I ended up going down to the Cooper Clinic down in Dallas, Texas. It's a one-stop shop where a lot of rich and famous go there, because you can go. Within 12 hours, you see pretty much every doc that you need to see, which would take up to a year of scheduling to get you through it. It takes one day. So my doc, at the end of it, you get a CAT scan and all that too. At the end of it, he goes, Ron, I got to commend you. He goes, at looking at everything and all your paperwork and notes and your CAT scan, you shouldn't be here by now. It's because of you and your fortitude and your thinking outside the box and all this other stuff you're doing is why you're here. And that even motivated me more, because that scared me, because I'm like, holy cow, like I keep dodging this bullet because I'm being preventative and staying ahead of it. So again, and I'm shifting my mindset left and right 15 degrees, because if I hit a stumbling block, like, oh, where's the answer? Where's the answer? So you got to keep chipping away your mindset, ideas, spitballing it, and then eventually the good, the proper solution will pop up. It always will, but you got to change the mindset. So, I have done oxygen while working out. They call it HBOT for probably 6 years now with a Live O2 machine. A lot of the professional athletes do it. Oxygen is a recipe for success for anybody for longevity and prevention of disease. I do it pretty much daily as part of that's one protocol. Oh, the other thing I want to get across to the audience is I'm a big believer in the hybrid approach. I'm not a staunch holistic, hey, it's got to be holistic or nothing. No, I'm a realistic. We live in a world that's very challenging with all the pollutants that we have. And there are, certain pharmaceuticals that are good and that you should take in combination. So that, I am not opposed to that approach. There's a win. That's a recipe for success for the hand that we are dealt on this planet right now. So you have to think asymmetrically. You have to embrace it all, but embrace each tool in that toolbox, what works specifically for you individually. So I was at the end of the road where, like, I think I'd done every technique on the planet that I knew of to keep me alive and keep me ahead of this disease and to try to wean me off of some of the pharmaceuticals I was on. Because if you don't have to be on them, why would you want to put a chemical in you? Why not just be natural? So I started to, and I've heard about stem cells throughout the years, but I never really understood them. And then I started to do a deep dive on it and read the success stories and watch the success stories on YouTube. And I'm like, holy cow, that's exactly what I need. So I made a pact to myself that I'm going to be the first disabled 9/11 responder to live to 100. And I'm going to do that with multiple tools in the toolbox, with the big tool of stem cells, because stem cells, and I'm pretty good at understanding. I'm a self-proclaimed shaman of stem cells now, with your guidance, Dr. Joy, obviously. Okay. But I know a lot about them now. But they literally just go in and fight inflammation and regrow tissue. What better for a lung disease? So there's a lot of misinformation out there in the U.S. in regards to whether you can get stem cells in the U.S. or not. I didn't know what I didn't know. So I just know that I knew there were several places in South America on some of the shows that I watch and people that I know and heard that went to these places. So I heard the FDA doesn't allow it in the U.S. and this and that. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess I got to go to South America. So I ended up.
Right. You're caught up in part of the misinformation.
I was totally. And, it's hard to even find on an internet search to really figure that out.
Because there's targeting of these clinics and not allowing them to promote and advertise. So that's probably why you can't find it. There's definitely a systematic suppression going on.
Absolutely. Yep. So, and I'm going to help reverse that. So I ended up going to Mexico to a clinic down there and went down there to get 150 million stem cell IV infusion. If you got a bum knee or a shoulder, they'll inject your shoulder. You can get IV. You can get both. However, I only needed IV infusion, so I went down, did that.
And what kind of cells were these?
They're the mesenchymal stem cells. Yeah, from birth tissue, the umbilical cord. Yep, 25. Yeah, 25 year female or younger, C-section birth, medically tested, no COVID vaccine, really, really safe, successful option. So I did that. And about 2 months after is when I really started to notice my breathing got better and my energy and I was actually in between. There is when I found you, Dr. Joy, because I don't give up. Like I'm like, all right, I did these stem cells. What's the next best option? Who else out there does this? I started looking in the US and ultimately I ran into you on YouTube.
Yeah. And, so just to clarify, you had mentioned that you actually experienced extreme fatigue after the stem cell treatment, correct?
I did.
For a couple of months.
I did. Yes.
And you were able to connect with like about 20 other patients when you were at that clinic at the same time?
Yes. Yeah. Everybody in my cohort there had experienced the fatigue, which, I chalked off to that's the tissue regrowing. I found myself wanting to almost be like a baby. I just wanted to eat and sleep. That's all I wanted to do. And literally, if I tried to even try to work out, I couldn't. The fatigue was pretty substantial
Hmm.
for several months, and then it finally went away.
Okay. So at the time you thought that was necessary for healing.
Yes, I
Okay.
again I'm pioneering this effort for the 9/11 veteran and first responder community. I'm like, all right, this is what you do. You get tired after you get stem cells.
And then you went back for a second time, correct?
I did. It was a 2-for-1 deal. So it's part of, I think, an FDA study they're trying to put together down there. And you go back for 30 million more IV infusion. And I went back there 3 months later at the 3-month mark. And I had about 2 weeks of fatigue after, not even close to what the first one was. And then it subsided. But I chalked that off to that because it was a lot less stem cells.
Right, right. And we can talk about that, why you may have experienced fatigue and what that was. And did you experience further relief in your symptoms after the second treatment?
I was about the same as when I felt it at the 2-month mark after the first dose. So my breathing felt the same. I was better. I was better than where I started from the first treatment. I definitely was like, this is the way to go. Stem cells is the way to go. I felt a lot better, a lot stronger. My breathing could be deeper. My workouts could be a lot stronger, and I could perform more to where I almost felt like I wasn't disabled anymore.
Mm,
I was like,
right.
this is awesome.
And then how long after that did you come to our clinic?
2 months.
All right. And what's your experience after the treatment we gave you? We gave you 40 million of stem cells. Yeah. How was that experience?
Amazing. I had no fatigue. I actually had the reverse. I had more energy. I, uh, interesting enough, I noticed with about the 2-week mark after, my verbal skills, my word retrieval was a heck of a lot better. Like I was spitting out words to where I don't remember saying that word in years. I
Wow.
was like, I sound educated all of a sudden again. Uh, so, I mean, I dealt with PTSD, a little bit of TBI, and age, and I'm sure that the toxins that I breathe affected my brain as well. Um, I'll tell you, remarkable, remarkable on the mental status, like what it has done for me with my focus and my word retrieval, and it seems to just get better. We're at the 2-month after mark
Mm,
now, and it just keeps holding strong. And
that's
my breathing's been at a different level. It now got even better to where there are days where I just don't even feel that I have a disability. I'm good to go.
wow, that's wonderful. That's so good to hear. Yeah, my suspicion of why you were getting the fatigue from those treatments in Mexico and pretty much in all overseas location, they use very similar methods, which is to get the stem cells. They can get it from your own body or from the birth tissue. I definitely think the birth tissue would be superior for most, in most cases. Most people, when they get older, their cells are going to degrade in quality. So the birth tissue is vastly superior in potency. But the problem with all these overseas locations, there's a reason that it went overseas, is because they don't have to participate in the kind of clinical study that's required to use expanded cells in the US. So if they want to give you large number of cells, then they have to do it overseas if they want to avoid all the money that needs to be spent and time and energy that's required if they have to do in the US. So they won't be able to make as much money if they do in the US, and it's a lot of hassle. So people just move overseas. So in Mexico, Colombia, Panama, in all these places, very, very similar. So they expand the cells, and it sounds great, right? I'm giving you 150 million cells instead of the 40, that I'm giving you. Sounds a lot less and kind of paltry in comparison to these large numbers, because I've heard numbers of 150, 200, 300. So you have to realize it's very easy to give people those kind of numbers, because the 300 million cells is not going to cost very much more than 150 million cells, because you're just growing them in cultures. So with large number of passages, the passages is each time when you change the cells from a culture medium to another culture medium. Each time you do that, there are going to be changes, especially after 3 or 4, we call those passages. So then you can, each passage, you get a lot more cells, not just doubling of cells. There's many generations before you need to change to a new medium before you get to a new passage. So you're getting tremendous number of cells, especially if you keep, moving them to a new container, dividing them, moving them to a new container, then you can really almost like growing cells on trees. You just keep expanding them. And the more you expand, the more they will have their own genetic expressions. So they will start to express the surface markers that's consistent with the donor, not a recipient. When the cells are in the human body, if it's in the recipient body, then it has a tendency to learn to adapt to the new environment. But if you're just growing them in a petri dish or in a culture medium, in an incubator, there's no signals to tell the cells what direction they should divide. And their tendency is they get a little stressed. So they start to express surface markers, start to differentiate a little bit. And that is what's going to cause the new body, the recipient body, to not recognize what is this, because this is no longer stem cells. Stem cells have very few surface markers that actually mark them as foreign. So they can go in almost like, I'm a blank cell. I'm not going to affect how you function. But when you start to expand the cells, then all of a sudden they have all these markers that show them who they were before they were, same as a donor. So your body starts to mount an immune reaction. So that's what I've heard in a lot of these clinics overseas, that people are having serious reactions. Sometimes when they give them treatment 3 times in a week, the first treatment, they may have no reaction because your body is like, okay, these are new cells. But by the time they were given second treatment a few days later, they're having an immune reaction. By the third time is very strong reaction, because your body just got primed and learned how to attack these cells. So I'm not surprised that you were getting significant fatigue, in your words, extreme fatigue. And yes, when you were given less cells, this space fairly far apart, 3 months, then the fatigue is not going to be as much as profound, because you weren't given as much foreign material for your body to react to, and your body probably has calmed down a little bit. So that's a potential issue. So just the high number doesn't equate to high efficacy. Actually, I've seen studies showing higher numbers, 10 times the number of cells compared to unexpanded cells, giving less results, maybe 70% efficacy. So you're reducing your efficacy. So that's something I think you were obviously not aware of, because that was not talked about, in all the marketing material from these locations. They just say, we're giving you so many cells and this is fantastic. So there's no fine prints for you to understand the nuances. Yeah. So I'm glad that you kept digging.
Yes, totally. What else that I wanted to get across is I was never taught or, told that, exosomes are a great add-on. And I don't even think those clinics are doing them down there, but I know that, you added, a high dose of exosomes to my treatment. It is, again, remarkable, the difference in the anti-inflammatory properties within days, and lack of fatigue, more energy. And the other thing too is, I was told not to work out like don't do anything for 3 months, which for me, I've never done that in my whole life. I've been physically, I've been in martial artists for 30 years and, doing what I did. It's just not who I am. And I was worried about getting major depression from not working out too.
Yeah.
So I actually got 2 months in, and that's when I ended up reaching out to you, and you were like, no, you can start working out now. I'm like, thank God.
I know. I don't know if you saw my face when I heard that. I was like, what kind of advice are they giving people? I mean, this is only one of the most important things to activate all your innate capabilities for healing. So to tell people not to exercise, it just, unless you injured certain tendons and bones and you were trying to get those to heal, there's really no good reason to tell people not to do that for themselves.
Yeah. And I tell you, as soon as I did start working out, I started feeling a lot better. My circulation was going, and my breathing was even getting better after that first treatment. So literally, heck, after the treatment you gave me, the following day when I got back to New York, I worked out and I felt great.
That's
I went to
awesome.
the sauna too. The
Oh,
other
good.
thing too, they don't do any cold or hot treatments, and I'm a big believer in those for longevity. And you had told me, the opposite.
Right. Go ahead and activate your body's healing potentials. Use these all these new technologies. Absolutely. Yeah. So I don't even know where people got these ideas of avoiding these very important therapies. Yeah. So I mean, the first few days, you want to give your body some rest. That makes sense. First 2-3 days, but I don't think it is an issue to work out the next day. I just, mild, right? You don't want to overexert yourself, but start, walking, mild exercise, I think is fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And you actually decided to come back for another treatment.
Yes. Yes. I know that, again, I'm going to be the first 9/11 responder to reverse my disease. I'm doing it. I feel it. I am confident that it's working just the way I feel. And then when I get a CAT scan here next spring, we'll validate that.
Yeah, wonderful. And I know you're also working to help other first responders to get some help.
Yes, I am working diligently here to figure out ways through charitable means to get a pipeline going for 9/11 responders and veteran burn pit folks with similar diseases from the toxins to get the same stem cell therapies that I get through you. So I'm working behind the scenes to get that done with Dr. Courtney too, and and yourself. And I think we're going to make it happen quicker than we thought.
Hmm. Do you sense a lot of resistance when it comes to stem cell treatment and getting some kind of approval?
That's a great question. That is part of the initiative here, is to get the World Trade Center medical program, which is supervisor ran by NIOSH, which is a federal government entity under the CDC. They report to the CDC to authorize at least a study on this, because of the gray area of it not being FDA approved, but a physician can actually provide the services as a infusion. You can speak more about that, but the tissue infusion, any MD can do it, I guess. So for them to recognize it with a study that you're putting together for us to present to the federal government, so it'll then be funded by the federal government for these responders to get these treatments to help them live longer. It works. These
Yeah.
cells work. It's no joke. It's for real. The beyond what I have, torn ligaments, the PTSD stuff, it works amazing. I can't get it across enough to everybody out there.
When you say PTSD stuff, what do you mean by that?
The cells going up and repairing the tissue up in your brain.
Mhm.
And I saw some of the participants in your study on YouTube. That amazing, by the way.
You mean traumatic
And
brain injury?
yep, I feel so much more mentally better and clearer headed as a result of these stem cells, which minimizes any PTSD symptoms. And the small little TBI that I have, it's helped just by the treatment.
Yeah. So basically, to answer your question, I mean, a point you raised about, whether or not stem cell treatment is legal in the US. I've talked about this, definitely as a medical provider, if you're using cells that are minimally manipulated, which means that they have not been processed by chemicals or enzymes, and they have not been expanded, right, grown to huge numbers in cultures. So if these were original cells separated from the donor, as a doctor, we have the ability to give it to another person as a tissue transplant. And it's still considered experimental unless we're treating a blood disorder. So if somebody has lymphoma, has some kind of some blood disease, and the treatment is to wipe out their own bone marrow and then transplant the stem cells to replenish. So in that case, it is FDA approved, and that's the only place that you can make a claim saying, yes, stem cells can treat these conditions. But for everything else, it's considered off-label. So, which means that if there's, current literature, because a lot of medicine, probably 60-70% of medicine is practiced based on what's called standard of care, not based on FDA approval. I can't tell you how many drugs that were used, 80% of the time we're using the drug doesn't have an FDA indication, but that's what's commonly accepted in the medical community, that this is established with efficacy and safety. So everybody's doing it, all the doctors doing it, and that's accepted as a medical treatment, even though there's no FDA approval. So in this case, for stem cells, that's one reason I founded American Academy of Integrated Cell Therapy, is to gather these clinical evidence from around the world of what kind of standard has been created to help various conditions. I mean, from head to toe. If anyone is interested in taking the course, they will see the breakdown, of all these organ systems and disease categories. I have over 30 categories. The lung is one category, the liver and eye, the musculoskeletal, neurological. So within each category, there's further division, right? Very, very nuanced division of different diseases. So there's a lot of research. Some are clinical, a lot are clinical on humans, and a lot of them are on animals. IV infusion is a mainstay of these treatments. Some are local injections, but the IV therapy has been shown in tremendous number of diseases, even for musculoskeletal. But for brain diseases, lung, heart, liver, other type of autoimmune diseases. So for various organs and various disease categories, there's a lot of research. So based on that, that's why doctors, at least have some legs to stand on, right? I'm giving you this because there's some evidence. And also we have evidence of how the stem cells work. There may be some diseases that are really obscure, and there's nobody that's putting the money and energy to study. But if you understand why the disease come into play, then we can figure out whether or not we can dovetail how the cells work to that disease. And is still considered experimental because we don't have the FDA approval. So you need to, as doctors, we need to explain to patients adequately, yes, maybe there's some clinical studies or maybe there's none, but then this is how the cells work. And there's never guarantee in results in medical practice. I mean, I've yet to find a doctor who's going to guarantee results for any treatment because everybody reacts so differently. But the percentage of people that respond, it's remarkable, in my practice and in all the doctors I've trained. So it's about giving people treatment, giving people transplantation, which is allowed for any doctors to provide, and then having a leg to stand on as far as clinical evidence, as established evidence from medical community around the world. So the United States is one of the most active research centers, but China is extremely active when it comes to stem cells, and also some locations, in Europe, Italy, Spain, very active. So yeah, it's new evidence keeps coming out, which is very exciting. People keep asking me questions. What about this disease? What about that disease? So I keep learning. So I'm feeling very hopeful, and I'm very glad that I could be on this journey with you and help more people who are in desperate need. Just like you said, you've lost so many colleagues. I mean, I can't imagine. You are still young, right? You're in your early 50s, and you've lost so many colleagues. I mean, all these are young, they probably lost their life in their 40s and early 50s. This is, not acceptable. So, and not just people who have, been through the World Trade Center or burn pit. There are a lot of other natural disasters, right, that could cause the similar issues and, extreme environmental toxins exposures.
Yes, that's correct. And I'll tell you, one thing I wanted to get across to the audience too is, and I tell a lot of the 9/11 responders this, hey, have you had a CAT scan? Like, no, they just give us an X-ray every couple years. I'm like, you got to get a CAT scan. That's the only way you're going to find stuff immediately, especially lung nodules, because lung nodules do not pop up on X-rays. So the limitations of the program are there, and it's proven. So I get the word out even beyond responders. I don't think it's a bad idea, just as a human, to get these CAT scans maybe once every couple of years, at least an upper torso one, to look for things that may that MDs aren't going to find even on blood work. So it's that outside of the box approach, and really not taking no for an answer, and kind of questioning the protocols that are out there already, and looking at all these holistic techniques, and look, they all work in culmination together. So the supplements that you have me on, and the ones that I've personally been taking for years, it's all the recipe for success. And then with the stem cells regrowth, it's you got to have that hybrid approach, and be willing to be all in with it too. And on the psychological end, meditation, I'm a big believer in it. If you have your body in tune with the universe, basically, and stress kills. It really does. It's physiological. And that's another tool in the toolbox, is the psychological end.
Right. Stress and fear, those will drag you down a whole different path. Whereas if you invoke hope and visualizing healing, that's going to take you on a whole other direction. I think this is why medicine is an art, right? You're incorporating different things. And even in my stem cell treatment, I'm incorporating different aspects. I give people ozone therapy right before the stem cells. It's all part of the one package, right? The different supplements that target different things. We want to enhance blood flow. We want to detox the body. We want to deliver all the, important trace minerals. And we want to give essential amino acids to the body to rebuild. And we want to mobilize the stem cells out of the bone marrow and keep them circulating. And we want to help the body, with its own antioxidant capabilities. So there are different things that we can target to put in one. And there's, you were doing hyperbaric oxygen on your own, which is fantastic. So there's so many things that can be put together. I think everything add a little bit. This is one reason I started adding different components, because I figured if I could bump people's healing potential up even by 2-3% by each modality I'm introducing. So if I'm introducing 5, maybe I'm giving them 10% extra. But hey, that's important to, to their healing. And then they can get do the stem cell treatment less, right? We can prolong the results that they're sustaining. So it's all about putting everything together to achieve the maximum, the best we can do at this point.
That right there is the recipe for success. Right there is constantly hedging our bets with, those essential amino acids, in the ozone and it's the recipe for success. I got to say it again. It's a badass, formidable one too.
Wonderful. And of course, that's going to keep evolving. The more, I keep going to conferences, I keep up talking with my colleagues. If there's new things I can implement implement, then I'll do that, So one last thing, I'm sure there'll be people who have been dealing with their own health issues or have been exposed to some, environmental toxins. Maybe some may want to get in touch with you to find out how you've been able to, achieve such remarkable results in your healing, or even be involved in some of these projects you are embarking on to help others, and maybe other 9/11 responders and veterans may want to reach out to you. How do they get a hold of you?
My email is Maligator, just like alligator, but Maligator, because I was a dog guy too with the Belgian Malinois. So it's MALIGATOR, 1 at iCloud.com. You can find me on Instagram, Ron the Tactical Don, and Facebook as well. My name, Ron Pastino. Love the help from any of the audience with, a charitable avenue to start putting this study together with Dr. Joy and Courtney to help others and to get this recognized by the federal government. It's a win-win.
Fantastic. I'll put your contact info in the show notes as well, so people can easily access. Yeah, so this is a great conversation. Thank you so much for your tenacity, so you can inspire others, and again for all the service that you have done for others.
Thanks, Doc. Thanks for having my back and being my doctor.
Yes, it's my pleasure and honor.